For staying with Newsnight. Sassa and its former acting CEO, Pearl Bengu, have been ordered by the Constitutional Court to pay costs relating to the case that extended the CPS contract. Cash Paymaster Services was contracted to continue paying social grants for another 6 months after its contract had expired. The court says Sassa made the case urgent. To unpack today's judgment, we are joined by Freedom Under Law's Nicole Fritz. Good evening, Nicole. Thank you very much for your time.
Good evening.
Surprise, surprise, but Tabile Dlamini was not negligent after all, nor did she act in bad faith by asking for, CPS's contract to be extended.
Right. So the court declines to order personal costs against former Minister Tabile Dlamini and against former acting CEO Pearl Bengu on the basis that it hasn't been established that they met the requirement of gross negligence or that they had acted in bad faith. But I think, as we know, there was a dispute of fact. The Constitutional Court is not well placed to make decisions in a dispute of fact in that it doesn't hear testimony, cross-examination. We know that it has ordered a Section 38 inquiry relating to the previous extension in respect of Minister Dlamini. A report has been compiled by retired Justice Mwepe. That has been passed to the Constitutional Court, and we await the Constitutional Court's judgment as to whether she will be liable for personal costs relating to last year's extension.
Do any idea as to when that will happen?
No, I'm afraid I can't tell you. I have no idea when that will come down from the court.
Okay. Now, Sassa and Ruth Bengu, who was the CEO, acting CEO, have been asked to pay the cost. But as many, I'm sure you would have seen a lot of commentators saying it's no victory really, in that it is still the taxpayer who's going to pay those costs.
Absolutely, and I can understand the exasperation felt by the person on the street that ultimately they are going to be liable for these costs. But I think that exasperation is not to be directed at the court. The court was placed in an invidious position and in effect it was held hostage. Sassa and the department reckoned that the court was not going to countenance an interruption of social grants, that in fact that they were the more conscientious arm of government. And so they basically held them over a barrel and said, if you don't grant this extension, even though we haven't complied with the requirements of urgency, the court says the urgency is self-created, the court's not going to countenance that. So
even more reason, some people argue, that the court could have found a way of ensuring that precisely because they had essentially, put, a gun, to the court's head, the court ought to have found some way of ensuring that they are held accountable for that.
Well, as I said, I mean, the court is not, well placed. Arguments are made on the papers. It doesn't sort of interrogate sort of cross-examination. It would have had to then appoint another Section 38 inquiry, which is fairly time-consuming and is not cost-free. And as I said, I mean, we do await a judgment as to Minister Dlamini's responsibility. So there may yet be that the person who ultimately bore responsibility does have to pay personal costs. But I think one has to appreciate that the court's ultimate and most weighty consideration was that the most vulnerable in our country, social grant beneficiaries, should not have to have any interruption to their social grants, and that was its primary concern. And I think we have to appreciate that was the case, and that there are other processes for accountability. I certainly don't think that any of the officials come off well in the judgment, and that if Sassa and the department want to show the public that they are owed, that they have earned the public's confidence, that accountability measures will be taken in-house, and that will be addressed within the departments and agencies.
So all is not lost?
All is not lost, and as I said, we wait to hear in respect of the Section 38 inquiry. What we have now is a court that's saying these social grants have not been interrupted, and persons who were most in peril have been protected. And that is a victory for our constitutional democracy, that our courts take so seriously that consideration.
So what's possible, what is within the purview of the government more broadly? What can still be done within what government can do to actually hold these people accountable?
Well, I think disciplinary processes should be instituted. Departments and the agencies can institute disciplinary processes, and they must, as the executive, must show that they take their constitutional obligations as seriously as the courts, and that persons who are charged with such serious obligations within our constitutional democracy are fit and proper. And when such serious allegations have been made against them, as in these court judgments, that the departments don't wait for courts to sanction these.
Well, that's what I was about to say. I mean, do you see that happening? Because it does seem like all that the government is doing now is appoint a commission there, appoint another inquiry there, but even things that it can still do, it is not doing, because it is saying, ask that, a law enforcement agency set up a commission of inquiry.
Right, and I think if things are to change, and hopefully this is a moment for greater accountability, we will see departments themselves, and that they have to do this, I think, to earn the public's confidence, institute those types of processes, those accountability processes themselves. And I mean, certainly we would appeal most, with as much sort of urgency as we can, to departments, to the executive, to undertake these processes, because it's not the Constitutional Court or the courts alone that carry the burden of fulfilling our constitutional obligations. The executive, the legislature are charged just as much with fulfilling those obligations, and accountability is at the cornerstone of the Constitution, and so we need to see them playing a larger role in that.
Do you blame people for being pessimistic? It has taken organizations like yours to taking, Sassa to court for the outcome we are seeing today.
Look, I mean, I think if one looks at the Sassa, the social grants crisis, I absolutely can understand the pessimism, and I think this was a really low point in, our constitutional democracy. But we've seen the court appoint a panel of experts. There is expertise available to Sassa in the department now that is unparalleled. I think we have seen, obviously, we need to continue to monitor this. The Constitutional Court has not discharged its supervisory jurisdiction. The expert panel is still reporting to the court, and the court has asked that it report on an even more frequent basis. But I think that there are signs that Sassa and the department are reacting differently than they did under the dispensation of former Minister Bathabile Dlamini. And hopefully there will be even more extensive improvement on that. But as I said, the court and the expert panel continue to exercise their roles, their supervisory functions, and it isn't at a point where the court has said, okay, we're going to release our supervisory function because we are sufficiently comfortable and confident.
But our guards should still be up.
Absolutely.
But Bathabile Dlamini, who has offended so many people by her behavior, but by what the things that she has said, was moved from another ministry to another one.
No, and it's absolutely true. Our guards should still be up, which is why, as I say, the court has not said we are, releasing our supervisory jurisdiction at this point. There is no more role for the panel of experts. The fact that there are these, additional levels to monitor the conduct of government departments, which, should be run-of-the-mill, ordinary day-to-day business, is a real indictment on the performance of those departments. So absolutely, I would agree with you 100% that this is not a time to relax one's guard, that one has to continue to be vigilant.
Okay, Nicole, thank you very much for your time. Hopefully, those in government who can still do something about what has happened, indeed do so.